It was the most embarrassing encounter in a man's life. He just secretly drew the woman in front of him. She opened the chocolates on the table. Then she enjoyed herself. The man froze for a moment. A trace of dismay flashed in his eyes. In order to swear sovereignty to this woman, he also broke off a piece of chocolate into his mouth. Then he looked at the woman with a hint of teasing. However, the woman was not affected by him. Instead, she continued to break off chocolates. They were amused by this strange encounter. They looked at each other and smiled at each other. The man was about to break the silence, but the woman had reached her stop and was ready to leave.
It's all yours.
She didn't respond to Ali's kindness and just cast a meaningful glance back. As Ali prepared to get off the train, he suddenly realized the same chocolate was still in his pocket. It was at this moment that he realized how embarrassing his behavior had just been. Perhaps it was fate. The next day, Ali met the woman again. He apologizes and explains yesterday's misunderstanding.
I also purchased the Echo Bar. And I'm hoping you worked that out by now.
Yeah. I'd love to see your face when you realized.
As a token of his apology, Ali gave the woman the painting he had drawn. They smiled at each other and shook hands to say goodbye. But as soon as he turned around, Ali began to regret it. He was upset that he hadn't asked the woman for her number. Then the woman suddenly stopped him.
Hey, Cameron? Here.
Oh no, it's for you. Keep it.
Give it to me again.
Okay.
Ali was as happy as a child at the woman's advances. Happiness came to him like the light in his eyes. Love is always good when it goes both ways. They started a family soon after. Soon after, his wife gave birth to a smart son. The family was as warm as the spring sun. The future looked bright, but the heavens didn't seem to favor them. Ali had been feeling dizzy lately. The whole world is spinning around in a flash. He tries so hard to stay awake, but eventually he fainted uncontrollably after a detailed examination by the doctor, but got a cruel news. He suffers from an incurable disease. Ali wanted to tell his wife the secret, but every time he backed off, he thought of his wife's anguish over his brother's death, and the fact that she had cried for months. She even locked herself in her room. Ali knew how much his wife valued her family. He also knew her fragile heart. She could no longer bear the shock of losing a loved one. He chose to remain silent. He buried this helplessness and fear deep in his heart. Ali felt more lonely and helpless than ever before. Looking at his wife and son's smiling faces, Ali felt a sense of sadness in his heart. Just when he was wandering, Ali remembered the advertisement for human cloning. Ali approached the doctor and said he was willing to participate in the cloning program. However, when he saw his own clone, he couldn't help but marvel at it, because it was of being identical to him. Although Ali had prepared himself mentally, but when actually facing this clone, he still couldn't accept it. The professor understood his concern and introduced Ali to another clone. The female clone was an office worker, living a simple and fulfilling life, but she never knew she was a clone. What was most reassuring to Ali, when he observed the woman and her daughter, he saw a scene of real happiness in life. The clone mother was taking care of her daughter. He also seemed to see his wife and son. They were in the company of the clone, and also have the same happy life.